The first question that I have here is a little bit personal, but okay. What was it like coming back into society from being with your Guru and having a wife and kids? Do you have the same challenges like we do? For example, communication troubles, discussion, division of labor, parenting. How do you handle them? This is one question. Don't I seem to be handling all this okay? What do you think? Anyway, so what was it like coming back into society from your Guru? Well, in the beginning it was terrible. Because it was a free life there. Nothing to worry about, nothing to bother about. But then you come back, but you come back consciously. It's not as if somebody is pushing you. You decide, okay, this is what the whole plan is all about. When you're shown the map and said, this is your plan, right, so you come back voluntarily. And therefore you know that when you come back, on the one hand, the environment, on the other hand, your mental situation. You're bound to have reactions, no question about that. So, yes, but since you have had the spiritual experience and come to the point where you have reached the understanding of the self, inner self, when you come back also to this, the world, ordinary world, when I say ordinary, not in a fashion as if it's not important, I say the normal world, you also are equipped to deal with it. Because you're coming from one situation to another, you're fully equipped to deal with it. And then I came back, I got married, I had kids. I see, in married life, people come to me and usually I'm going to get married, any suggestions? I first say, are you serious? Yeah, yes, I am. Okay, I'm going to get married, so what do you suggest? My advice always is, when you start a married life or when you start living together with somebody, either way, start with the understanding that you are not always right. The other person might be right. Half the problem is solved. It's not a clash between two people, it's a clash between egos, two egos. So if you start the first chapter by saying, maybe sometimes I'm wrong, maybe the other person is right, then there is space for give and take, for adjustments, for communication. Nobody is perfect, right? Even if you have touched something very spiritual, you're still in a human body, so you also have some imperfections. It's not totally out. Yeah, in your meditation you may be perfect, but when you come down, there will be some little bit left over from your past. So, this is how I dealt with my life. I said, maybe I know about Vedanta, yoga, meditation, I might have gone into different states of consciousness, fine, but I still might be wrong in day-to-day life. Maybe she is right. So, even if you have an argument or a discussion, if you had an argument, the argument turned into a discussion. There's a difference between an argument and a discussion. An argument is when I say I'm right and you say you're right. You can't meet. There's no discussion. When it's a debate or a discussion or a dialogue, then both of us are trying to look at a problem and trying to solve it. There is no competition who's going to win. This is the way I've handled my life. There have been low points, there have been high points, but we are able to navigate. I think it's also because I'm deeply anchored to the inner essence. And therefore, I see the inner essence in others. And therefore, I don't find fault with people. I have managed. All my children are witness to that. You know, I came from a household where children were always looked after by the mother. But when I started my life, I took kind of 50% role in looking after the children. When it became 55, I used to object a bit. But so that's how it is. That's how I handle the situation. I think it's a great advantage to be anchored in your true inner self and then lead your life. That's why in ancient times, especially in India, not other places, in India, they divided life into 4 stages. The first stage was called the Brahmacharya, the second stage was Grihastha, family life, and the third was Vanaprastha. When you have done your job, you retire into a quiet place. And then the last one is sannyas, giving up, renunciant. You may or you may not become a renunciant. It's not, none of these are compulsory. But the first stage you start with Brahmacharya, where you learn how to deal with your emotions, how to deal with your life, how to go deeper into yourself and understand the different psychological layers of your being. This is the training that is imparted, no more. It's all gone. Ancient times, I'm saying. So then, when you intend to get married, if you want to get married and have a family, then you're fully equipped to handle this. Because you know your emotions, you have found out what are the different aspects of your personality, and you know how to deal with it. So then, this is the life when you get married and you have children, and then it's all set. And then when you have done your work, which means when you have settled everything and, and then you retire into a quiet place, and then you continue pursuing the inner journey which started when you were a brahmachari, the first stage. This life of living with someone, the partner, marriage, also helps in many cases to make you better. There's no one who can break your ego better than your own wife or your husband. So you know where you stand, you learn where you stand. And if you're humble, you don't get upset about it. Right? So you're ready for the next stage. Which is going deeper into the inner world. And then if you want to become a renunciant, you can, or you don't have to, because if you're already mentally mature and if you have anchored in the inner self, there is not really the need to change your robes or go away somewhere or join a monastery. I'm not against all that. Some people can do that, some people cannot do that. What I'm trying to say, that it's more an inner state than an outer manifestation. You can change your robes, but you may not have changed. But to lead a spiritual life in the family is not as easy as when you're alone. Because you have no challenges with you. I mean, there are other challenges, but not the intimate challenges. But I think one can do that, and I think that is the future. I've done it, and I think everybody can do it. I'm not any different from you. I did it, so you can do it. Main thing is this: please don't think that we are always right. We have solved the problem, almost. I know I may not have answered it completely, but food for thought. Is Kundalini awakening needed for liberation? But what is the next sentence? Third eye awakening? Question mark? What does it mean? Means that is needed. Is that needed? Okay. First, we need to know what liberation is all about before we ask the question, is Kundalini awakening needed for liberation? When the word liberation is used traditionally, different schools use it in different ways. In the Buddhist system, liberation is nirvana. Means where nirvana is not the blowing away of everything that was. It's not as if you're finished and you're going into oblivion. No. Nirvana is the cutting off of all the negative emotions, all the things that disturb you, all the things that are likely to pull you down. And when the mind is thus purified, then it becomes quiet and settles down into the void. The Buddhists call it the void, shunya. The Vedantin calls it purna, fullness. It's only a question of the words. It's the same. So this is what is meant by liberation from the Buddhist point. Okay. Now the Vedantin, in Vedanta, liberation, the word used is moksha, which is actually a good definition of the word liberation, which means freedom. Freedom from, if you stretch it a little bit, it's freedom from the known. Freedom from all that you know. Freedom from all the images you have formed. Freedom from all the ideas that you have formed about yourself and about others and about life. Breaking of all images until you only have your essence, which is the pure witness. And therefore you're free. This is the meaning of the word moksha when it's used as liberation. In the Sankhya philosophy and in yoga, the word used is kaivalya. Patanjali says kaivalya happens when the mind is free of all distractions. Okay? Now when the mind is free of all distractions, it becomes a clear mirror. And then there is no more the limited mind, but the unlimited mind, which is no different from the word used in Sankhya and Yoga, Purusha. Purusha doesn't mean male, okay? Purusha here means the essence of your consciousness. That is called Kaivalya, because then the yogi realizes Kaivalya comes from the Sanskrit word Kevalam, which means only one. So then one realizes that there is only one consciousness. There aren't many. Problem starts when there are many. When there are two. Whenever there is duality, there is a problem. All duality vanishes. There's only one. You're alone. But this alone is actually all one. Not that you're isolated and alone. Everything is one. This is the meaning of the word liberation. Now, is Kundalini awakening needed? Well, the Kundalini awakening is to do with, as I explained to you, taking your lifting your awareness from the gross to the subtle. But it's not necessary that everybody attains liberation by arousing the Kundalini. However, when liberation is attained, whatever the means, the Kundalini is active anyway. So when you say this particular Kriya or Kundalini yoga, it means you're trying to do it in a scientific way, directly dealing with the Kundalini. In other ways of liberation, it awakens of itself in different centers. It need not necessarily be a linear awakening from the Muladhara to the Sahasrara. It can also locally open in the heart center, it can open in the navel center, it can open in the head center, but then if you don't have guidance, you could get lost. You don't know what to do. So therefore, this is, if you want liberation, it does not mean that you should practice only Kundalini yoga. The desire is for liberation, not to awaken the Kundalini. But when the Kundalini is awakened, then it's a gradual step-by-step ascent into the subtle world and the understanding of the self. If someone, due to strenuous effort for many lives, is born now and is already a mature being, it may be that that person attains liberation without going through any of these things. But for most people, it's a step-by-step system by which you can move forward. And in all liberation, people enjoy the bliss. And the awakening of Kundalini is also a blissful experience. And it takes you from the gross to the subtle. There are cases when people have been liberated without even thinking of what Kundalini is all about. I'm not ruling that out. I'm saying, but that doesn't mean that you can dismiss this as, oh, it's not necessary. Maybe for some it is necessary. Basically, it's throwing away of all burdens. I must tell you this. There is a particular sect among the Buddhists, early Buddhists, the early Buddhism, which was Mahayana Buddhism, which was brought into Tibet by Padmasambhava, who they call Guru Rinpoche. And Padmasambhava brought this particular brand of Buddhism, and in that there is one section called the Dzogchen. Since you asked me the question, I'm trying. If you ask me, were you a Buddhist, did you learn all this? No. Kundalini did the trick. So this is another thing about Kundalini. When it is awakened in certain centers, you get access to knowledge without reading books. Okay. Now that we don't have to believe, let's move forward. I'm discussing something. Yeah. So, Dzogchen is one of the sections of this particular teaching, which is called instantaneous liberation. And there are different stories which are passed on for people to understand what it means. Here is a story. A great Dzogchen master and his disciple, who has been his disciple for many years, walking along the path, just walking somewhere, pondering. And the disciple kept needling the Guru, saying, "What is this? I've been with you for 13 years, nothing has happened to me. Oh, you've been asking me to do this, to do that. I've been breathing from here and sometimes breathing from the bottom." He didn't say that. But nothing has happened to me. So what to do? So the Guru said, "What do you expect to happen?" So he gave a definition of what he expected to happen. He said, "What if I tell you that it is none of these, what you're expecting? Can you keep that image of your liberation out of your mind?" He said, "No." Blunt guy. "No." "Okay," he said. "Now, but still do you obey me?" He said, "Yes, whatever you say." "Okay." He said, "You see the little big sack there? You know what a sack is? S-A-C-K. Bring me the sack. There's a lot of stones lying there. Just fill it up nicely. Fill it up full and then tie it with a rope. Now take it and put it on your shoulders. You see yonder hill up there? Walk up to the hill." So this guy said, "Is this another way to divert my attention? Because I am asking inconvenient questions." So anyway, so he lifted it up. But he was a good disciple, very obedient. He lifted the sack full of stones on his shoulders and climbed up the hill. Great difficulty. It was very heavy. The hill, the terrain was rough, and somehow he managed to go to the top, and in the top there was nothing but one single tree standing there. Look, many of you want liberation, right? But am I putting you through any such thing? No. So maybe you won't get liberation. So, with great difficulty, panting and sweating, he walked up with this top. And the master very happily on his horse came up, and he was waiting for him. And then he said, "Master, I can't hold this anymore. It's too much of a burden for me. What shall I do?" He said, "Throw it down." So he threw it down, went and sat under the tree and said, "I got it," he said. So liberation is the throwing away of all burdens, including the things that you know, the definitions that you have made, including the definitions for liberation, and to be completely free. Now, this can also happen, and in many cases has happened, with the awakening of the Kundalini. On the other hand, it has also happened without. But then, when you say without, it means it has happened in a different way, but the Kundalini is already active, without even the person's knowledge. So, I think you understand what I'm saying.